Is this the best combination of age and price available everywhere? Today we're doing a review of Knob Creek 9-Year. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch, and thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So that's right, today we're diving into Knob Creek 9-Year small batch bourbon. This is an absolute staple in the world of budget whiskey. You see that 9-Year on here, and to be honest with you, that stands out on shelves as something available for right around 35 bucks. So what are we looking at here in terms of where this comes from and what's the juice in the bottle? So this is a product of Jim Beam Distillery overall, but Knob Creek is their particular lineup. They've got the 9, the 12, the 15, the 18 now. And this is the workhorse of that lineup, the budget option. Like I mentioned, this is a small batch bourbon, so it's a combination of different barrels all batched together for consistent flavor. The mash bill on this is 75% corn, 13% rye, and 12% malted barley. So a very solid mash bill with a corn forward presence. Proof-wise, we're looking at something that is 100 proof. I think that's always a great proof in terms of bringing a lot of flavor but still being a good sippable sort of budget bourbon. And then last but not least, in terms of price, this is right around 35 bucks MSRP, which again, for a 9-year product, that is a heck of a good price. So those are the stats on Knob Creek 9-Year small batch. It's got a high potential for really great value. So let's dive into the whiskey and see how good it is. Before we do that, do just want to say two things. First, thank you. Thank you so much for all the support lately. It's been awesome to see. The channel's been growing pretty quickly, but I've also loved engaging with you guys, going back and forth in the comments. Your recommendations and tips are awesome. And then second, we'll say that the goal now is to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2022. That's starting to look like it's within reach. We're gonna do a really fun giveaway once we get to that point. So if you haven't already, please consider hitting that big red button. So without further ado, let's dive into Knob Creek 9-Year, this absolute staple and value bourbon. On the nose, that caramel is really nice. And vanilla and honey mixed in there. And then a good nuttiness. Not too much nuttiness, not an overwhelming amount, but a good strain of it. There is a touch of ethanol, but also like a simmering cinnamon heat. And then sort of a chocolatey touch to it. Overall, it's very candy bar-like with this caramel, vanilla, chocolate, maybe a little bit of nougat, some honey in there. And then there's maybe a little bit of a cherry in there too, but overall it's sort of that candy bar-like presence. Very inviting, very nice. Let's get into the palate now and see how that all holds up. Cheers, everybody. Okay, so first I noticed just more nuttiness and more chocolate on the palate than the nose even presented. Those are there, but the palate, they really came to the forefront for me. And there's a spiciness wrapped in around that nuttiness that's very cinnamon-like, baking spices forward, which is really nice. There's still a strain of that vanilla and honey and caramel underneath everything, but I do feel like that nuttiness and cinnamon really came through for me on that sip, which was certainly delightful. I mean, it definitely has a good presence to it. If there's anything I'm noticing, it's just that the back end and the finish aren't as strong. They fade a little bit, but we're gonna have to evaluate that, so let's go in for a second sip now and see if we can pick out some more flavors and complexity here. Cheers. Okay, so on that sip, the back half of the sip especially, there's a little bit more of a bitter oakiness to it, touch of astringency, but also a good oak presence there that sort of balances out that sweet candy bar-like presence. So it gives it a little bit more heft. I definitely still think the finish fades off a little bit, but overall that punch of spicy nuttiness is really nice. A little bit of chocolate still there, and then a good oaky presence. I mean, overall it's a very rich and dark sipper in terms of a budget value whiskey that you can get your hands on. And then there are those strains of vanilla and honey sticking around so that it doesn't go too oaky or dark for the average bourbon drinker. Let's go now to the third sip. We'll really focus on that finish and evaluate that. Cheers, everybody. Okay. So it's very consistent in what flavors it presents, though I got a couple extra things there. First, noticing a little bit more cherry. So there is a fruit element here that's coming through. It's a little bit darker of a cherry too, which is nice. And then I would say that nuttiness is both peanut, but I'm also getting like a hazelnut factor going on here. So it's not just a one-dimensional nuttiness for me, which I'm always gonna give a big thumbs up to see that be sort of complex and mix in with that cinnamon well. Then finally, just to evaluate that finish, it's medium in length for sure. It sticks around. What really sticks around is sort of a warming heat and a little bit of that like vanilla and honey sweetness for me. So like that cinnamon, vanilla, and honey kind of stick around, which is nice. I don't think it's the most flavorful or punchy finish overall. That might be the weakest part, is just it fades a little bit quickly. It's kind of what you might expect for a budget sipper overall, but in terms of the amount of flavor it brings to the front and mid palate, very, very nice. I will say that a little bit of ethanol, a little bit of astringency, a little bit of oakiness even could turn some beginners off. So I do think this is sort of like a second bourbon, a sort of second step into something a little bit more hefty for people. You might want to start with something more desserty and then bring them to this and be like, now here's a step up in terms of a little bit of complexity and a little bit of punch to it. So what are my overall thoughts on Knob Creek 9-year? I think it is a heck of a budget sipper. I mean, this is a workhorse bourbon for a lot of people for good reason. That 9 years shows up in the dark richness and little bit of extra oak you get in this bourbon, but then that candy bar like sweetness is going to appeal to so many people across the spectrum. And lastly, I would just say, if you're looking to give somebody a gift or really help them elevate their bourbon game, I think this is a great gift for 35 bucks. It's going to give them a good amount of complexity and flavor that Jim Beam is really known for, and Knob Creek, this particular lineup, it'll give them a taste of that, because I really do think Knob Creek is an underrated sort of lineup out there in whiskey these days. So absolutely, I give Knob Creek 9-year a big recommend. The only knock might be that the finish isn't as flavorful as I could hope for, but overall, a really, really nice budget sipper, and maybe, just maybe, the best combo of age and price out there in terms of budget sippers and workhorse bourbons that you can get your hands on at any time. Until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.